think it's a big problem. Depending on how we manage it as a party, once we do it well, rather it will help us progress in the right direction.
Listen live on Community Watch on Focus 943. It's 28 minutes after 7 on Wednesday, the 21st of July, 2010. Well, Dr. Pakwasi Ndium says he would or he won't be a part of the CPP's 2012 activities till a measure is secured with the PNC. President John Evans Atta-kusi has also called on government or the banks to reduce interest rates. So we'll go into details of what actually are the conditions under which banks will do that. Joining us online now is Mr. Gordon-Newlove-Asamoah. He's a lecturer here at the Business School of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. The president has called for banks to reduce interest rate. You'd be better in a position to educate us. How does this thing work? Is it up to the banks to reduce the interest rates? How actually does it work?
Well, basically, it's up to the banks to reduce interest rates. Normally, the banks look up to the central bank to give them the policy rates, because when the banks borrow from the central bank charge them a prime rate. So basically, whatever rate that the commercial banks will charge depends on the prime rate. The prime rate will be the minimum plus the other charges that the banks will charge. At the moment, the prime rate has been reduced to about 13%, meaning that the minimum the banks can give out loans will be 13%. But we shouldn't forget that all the other expenses, the banks get all the other expenses from the interest that are paid by clients. So, though the prime rate itself has come to 13%, it doesn't mean banks should charge 13%. They have to charge 30% plus whatever charges they have to add to all those things, because that is why they're going to get money to pay their workers and so on and so forth, to undertake projects and so on and so forth. So that is it. But if you look at the Ghanaian case,
okay,
the banks are charging too high. If prime rate is 13% and some banks are charging 32%, it makes borrowing very difficult, very expensive to borrow, and makes business very difficult to acquire the needed capital to expand productivity. So the president calling for banks to reduce the interest rate, I think, is in the right order. I've been calling for banks long ago to reduce the interest rate because it's killing people, it's too high.
Okay, even before I go to whether or not the bank can be induced to reduce them, how low, looking at the current interest rate of over 30%, how low can the bank come down to, or can we expect the bank to come down to in respect of interest rates?
Oh, they can come as low as 20%, because if the base rate is, let's say, if the prime rate is 30%, and mind you, it's not as if every money that the banks are using.
Very sorry for that, but we've been struggling with the phone lines here. But we'll try to get Mr. Gordon-Newlove-Asamoah back online to tell us or educate us on the banking system and how it works. Anyway, let me go through the President John Evans Atta-kusi story. And it says President John Evans Atta-kusi on Tuesday called on commercial banks to reduce the current high interest rates to reflect current economic trends in the country. He said now that the economy was improving with a further decline in the Bank of Ghana base rate, the banking sector could be of more help to local industries, with a reduction of the interest rate to sustain industries and help them to grow. The central bank last week announced a reduction in the base rate from 15% to 13.5%. President Mills made the appeal when Mr. Charles Kofi, president of the Ghana Employers Association, led a delegation to call on him at the Castle Osu in Accra to put forward their concerns following the current utility tariff increases. They presented some proposals that would enhance the nation's industrial operations to government, but complained about interest rates charged by various banks in the country and intimated that this is a disincentive to investment and expansion. President Mose lauded the role of the industrial sector in national development and assured stakeholders that government would endeavor to eliminate problems confronting the nation's industrial growth within the national agenda of building a better Ghana. So these are more coming up. Let me carry on with the story. It says the president commended the private sector's contribution to the economy through job creation and the means for workers to take care of themselves and their dependents. Mr. Charles Kofi also commended government for calling on the PURC to take a second look at the price increases, but pointed out that the president that if the call for downward adjustment of the rates are not adhered to, it would have a negative effect on employment. They contended that most employers would be reeling under debts, and that would cause some of them to close down, whilst others would cut down their workforce. I've got Mr. Gordon-Newlove-Asamoah back online. Sir, you were telling us how the banking system work in respect of the reduction of interest rates as and when prime rate goes down.
Yeah, as I was saying, it could come down as low as 20%, because if the prime rate is 13%, so you have, let's say, 7% margin. So banks will have other innovative ways of generating income to support their activities, not necessarily charging so high. So if you have other ways, like making sure that most people who come for the loan are able to pay their loans back and other things, it helps the banks to generate more income. But if because of, let's say, bad debt, you decide to charge so high an interest rate, the higher interest rate in itself contributes to bad debt.
Okay.
Because you go in for loan, and by the time you finish payment, at least it's a 3-year loan, you would have paid double the amount you borrowed. So it doesn't give people the incentive to pay. So when they go in for loan, they default.
Mr. Asamoah, apart from
the rate is too high.
Okay, apart from the base rate that has come down, what are the other factors that would contribute to a change in interest rate?
Well, other factors like, of course, you're talking about the treasury bill rate. If treasury bill, let's say 10%, and the bank would think that borrowing money from the private sector will be difficult because more people may want to buy treasury bill from the government sector. But if the treasury bill is also coming down, then more people will now send their money to the banks to lend the money to the banks. So at the moment, the T-bill is also down. It's not as high as it used to be, 40%. It's just around 13 to 15% now. So, and of course, another factor.
Okay, very sorry. We'll try to get Mr. Gordon-Newlove-Asamoah back online as he helps us through with this. But we've been having these troubles with our phone lines for quite a while now. Anyway, this is still your community watch on Focus 94.3. So that was Mr. Gordon-Newlove-Asamoah. He's a lecturer here at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology Business School, taking us through what is required to reduce interest rate from the current over 30%. According to him, as low as 20% can be achieved. Currently, base rates are 13.5%. This is still your community watch on Focus 94.3. He has also outlined some of the possible factors to that as treasury bills, and he told us a lot about how treasury bills can help increase or decrease interest rates, whether or not they'll go down or go up. This again is your community watch on Focus 94.3, and this was a concern raised by the President John Evans Tamils on Tuesday. That was yesterday when okay, I'm told we do have Gordon-Newlove-Asamoah back online. Sir, can you carry on here?
Yeah, as I was saying, inflation has also come down. So when you have higher inflation, then you're thinking that if I lend money out to customers or to clients, by the time they pay back, the money would have lost its value so much. But here's the case, inflation is also coming down. So it's not necessary that when you lend money now, if the person you will be paying in a year or 3 years' time, the value would have come down so drastically. So inflation is one aspect. That is why as inflation keeps coming down, the central bank keeps reducing the prime rate. So it should reflect in the interest rate that the banks charge. But it's not reflecting. That is the problem. We're having a major problem because
the
banks are not willing to come down. They are not reducing their interest rate, and it's not helping the industries. That is why industries are crying.
Mr. Asamoah, what could be the reason why the banks are not willing to come down on interest rates?
Well, one, the banks want